I started off acting. I went to the American Conservatory Theater, so I have my master's as a performer. And when I'm writing, I am shouting in my room, acting all the parts at once in order to get the feel tone and also to know that it can be done. And so that's how I first started. Even inside Run Boy Run, I was shouting to the wind while doing it. What doesn't happen is the public sphere, where I'm like, okay, I will do this and other people will consume it, as opposed to in draft writing state. And in to step in like that, I did discover how tired my lead character is of Abasiyama. I discovered how the drag of history over time and the choice that she makes to say yes and do something loving after being wrecked inside of her marriage, it cost in a different way when I was performing it, knowing that everyone was going to hear it.
Right on. Now,
Mhm.
speaking of that, Run Boy Run confronts how trauma of
Mhm.
war lingers in the body, like you just noted, in the body and in marriage, right?
That's
So,
right.
what drew you initially to focus on this kind of quieter, more internal battle? And why do you feel the audio format was the right medium for that kind of intimacy and rupture?
So I'm in the middle of writing a 9 play cycle spanning 100 years. And Run Boy Run, which you're hearing in this audio format, first started out as a stage play. And it was a stage play that you were meant to watch the trauma unfold. And a lot of it was silent. In fact, in the stage play and a little bit in the audio play, there's a nonverbal character. And then over time, the protagonist disciple becomes nonverbal himself. And the reason why we decided to adapt this one was because we are inside disciples' PTSD break. And it just provided an awesome opportunity to be inside his mind for a minute. And there's a way in which the audio play feels a little scarier, even than the stage play, because you can feel in Lindsay Jones's sound design how we're moving from one world into another and you're discomfited. And there's something about that audio world of it that is really helpful in getting inside of Disciple's mind as he's experiencing a break. So we're not just observing it, we're actually maybe feeling it in the audio play.
For new listeners and, new fans, perhaps, fans that will love you after this interview and learning more about this podcast, and new listeners, really new listeners encountering this family disciple for the first time. What do you hope resonates most deeply with them as they unpack Run Boy Run?
Well, I hope that you are interested enough to experience the rest of the cycle in some way, to ask yourself what actually brought these people to Worcester, Massachusetts. Why is this Nigerian man who's got echoes of war and at the heart of Nigeria during the Biafran War, why is he suddenly like lost and stranded in a world with howling, frigid wind? So I hope it builds interest and curiosity in his lineage and what brought him here. And in the more local sense, when listening to Run Boy Run, I hope it builds empathy for people who might not have the same realities as you. Disciple is extraordinarily complicated. I am never asking anybody to go, hey, let's make Disciple my best friend. What I am asking, though, is can we maybe imagine a world where we don't negate him, where we hold illness inside of conversation? And as the episodes drop, I think there's a world in which that could be built over time. So I'm hoping for that.
So, as you just noted, Disciple lives in like the echoes of this war. So, for listeners that may not be familiar with this war, right?
Mhm.
How did you find that balance in honoring this bit of Nigerian history while also being aware of the emotional stakes that you wanted to pull the listener in into this world? How did you kind of strike that fine balance, you know?
Okay, so I'm a writer that does a lot of research. And so I know quite a bit about the Biafran War, as in probably have a file cabinet full, scanned documents, firsthand accounts, reportages. And there is a difference for me between what is academic and a paper and what is a play. And a play will slam you more into the emotional state. So, what I wanted to make sure was for anybody who was trying to locate the moments in the war that this might be happening, they might be able to go, ah, okay, I think this is where Disciple was coming from, where he comes from. I think that this might have been the first run from the north that Ben Gunn kind of says in passing, Ben Gunn being his brother. I wanted to make sure that it was real and true and specific to the war itself, but my focus was bringing you into the heart of what war does to a body and how it can arrest development. Because Disciple experienced the war when he was around 12, if I'm remembering correctly, and he's been living on that loop ever since. And that was the thing that was most important to me. Was so the Biafran War became a frame that I really understood, a frame that is important for me to unpack, being Nigerian myself and a descendant of people who went through a war, that war. I wanted to locate it, but I wanted the focus to be on the human.
And Miss, let me know if I'm pronouncing the actor, your lead character, your lead actor. Is it Chike?
Chike, yeah.
Wonderful. This audio drama marks a return for Chike to the role of disciple, right?
Yes.
So, what did it mean to have him revisit this character? You know, what was the creative energy like for y'all in the booth, you know, recording this character?
It was Chike is a friend. It feels like I've known Chike many more years than I have. And it's because we were in the trenches together on a world premiere, the theater, the mounting of it. And so was it a world premiere? No, it wasn't a world premiere. It was the New York premiere with Chike. And so yeah, it felt like my brother was in the booth. And there is something about doing really difficult work. You don't want to do it, at least for me, with somebody that you have difficulty with. There needs to be a little bit of warmth around it all. So we can say some really hard stuff and then just flow into something else when the stage manager calls break. And that is what I have with GK. It was a wonderful work experience, and he also dragged all of the knowledge from the world premiere into the audio book. I keep saying world premiere, from the New York premiere into the booth with him, and it meant we could run faster because the work is pretty dense, it's pretty poetic, and he knew what all the beats were and just kept filling them out and rounding them out.
How has exploring this world with Disciple and your research with this world, you know, has it been transformative for you? How much of yourself, your personal journey, have you poured into this project?
I mean, I think for me, it's the same thing that I hope people will take, which is empathy. I write from question, from a burning question. And for me, in Run Boy Run, the question for me was, when does trauma become tradition? And it was a question that's been rippling through my life, not in the same ways as what's happening in Run Boy Run, but with the same depth of need to figure something out. And the play for me and being inside of these characters gives me an opportunity to to explore a question and then to have empathy for people who I think are coming at the question in ways I don't agree with. And so I too am on an empathy journey, and the plays help me get there. And the darker I get, the more I am seeking light and figuring out how to love through that. And there's a part of my soul that rests. So yeah, that's what I get. I get a little peace in answering the question in my way. There's still people who have seen the Biafran War that might be alive. And when I look out and see the people who are talking about it, there are people in my generation who did not see the war. And one of the things about building new vocabulary is I am interested for immigrants and people who don't have languages of therapy to figure out what talking is about some of the things that might have happened so that trauma doesn't become tradition. And if a play can prod people to talk, then that is building forward. A lot of the times people who have been through war, who have been through real awful bodily harm in a way that, sometimes if you're from America and you're a civilian, you don't understand. There's no language for it, even in like just the common everyday. And then when you slam on top of that the other of not being from America and not having even the building blocks for talking about that war, um, yeah, I just that's what I mean about building vocabulary, building forward. And it might not happen for an immigrant in the same way it happens day to day here when we talk and process trauma. So I'm just looking for ways to start a conversation organically. So yeah.